can't get it. I can't reach.
No, keep away from me.
Welcome to the metro, young stalkers. Make yourself at home, have a swing of your mushroom tea or toilet vodka, and listen to an old man's story. Life here in the metro is short, bitter, and ripe with danger, yet still a spuzzle if your dad ever told you of one, in comparison to the cold shoulder offered by the desolate Moskva. In these abandoned, dark, and mysterious tunnels, only a few rules bridge the gap between a survivor and a mutant snack. The ammunition of past is worth its weight in gold, and in this trying chapter of mankind's existence, sending them down a gun barrel is nothing short of a crime. This pile of brass, lead, and gunpowder buys you weapons, food, vodka for intimate contact's sake, and everything else a man needs. Forget food. Disregard water. Neither of them should leach a fraction of your focus from the conventional metro ammunition. Liquids and foodstuff can deter the biological needs, but will fail at stopping a monster's snout from digging into your ribcage. The air on the surface is toxic, unfit for man. A cracked gas mask and expired filters can spell your doom. Make sure to thoroughly grope the many a hapless surface dweller for a chance to get a spare minute on your clock. In the depths of metro, even a man has turned to an animal's life among an army of other abominations. Your safest bet in an unknown environment is to shoot first and ask questions later, regardless if it's a beast or a fellow bipedal humanoid the barrel is pointing at. Safety in numbers, patsan. Chances of getting turned into a meal is always somewhat low when there are a handful of other Spitfires present in the fight. Keep that in mind. The tunnels serve as the shelter for a great deal of otherworldly events. Keep your sights clear and only tread those cursed grounds if absolutely necessary. That is all I have for you today, Stalker. Remember to keep your explosive lead dispensers clean, filters plenty, as you drift among the rusted walls of Metro, our subterranean world. Metro 2033. Formerly known as Metro 2033, The Last Refuge is a post-apocalyptic first-person shooter developed by 4A Games, the absolute mad lads behind the king of Slavjanks, Stalker, Shadow of Chernobyl. It features a young dweller named Artyom embark on a crusade across the metro and the desolate Moscow to save his home station from imminent destruction. The project first saw the light of day in 2010 and was met by good sales and high praises. Hello, this is your beloved narrator you didn't know you wanted and needed, Perverted Seb.
And coming in from the sidelines and locked in an eternal battle to keep this text even somewhat civil is the brains of this operation, the creative Seb.
We are somewhat excited to bring the two of you who actually gives a genital contact about this video a small dive into the depressive labyrinth of Soviet tunnels that is Metro 2033.
Psst. Hey, if you think watching this little vid was worth it, please shotgun the like and sub button. I don't. We won't hold it against you.
In spite of being a rough gem, this is still a Slavjank after all. It manages to paint a very atmospheric and believable world, strong in both lore and design, with competent story, interesting mechanics, decent yet nonetheless punchy gunplay, and a good variety of set pieces. And while the Redux version released 4 years later went on to arguably become an objective improvement, the current version still manages to have its own signature twist lost in the subsequent series. In short, do play this game. Or more precisely, do grab a key from G2A or go full Jack Sparrow on it. It definitely is a bit stretched, maybe slightly unfair in places, but will give you an enjoyable 6 to 8 hour run, with some replayability and mods sprinkled in for good measure.
By any means. Many a great YouTuber has reviewed this game, and the series in general, which is why we wish to start this thing off with something a bit unique. We wish to first bring your attention towards the game's
Keep away from me.
cluster intimate contact, more like indeed. In all honesty, it deserves a video of its own. When it comes to game dev, both this and Stalker are one big case study as to how many factors come into play when one tries to dabble into this incredible medium. The work, the technical limitations, the length of development, the budget, the process of translating thought into a physical form, mold and reshape concepts, occasionally rendering them completely unrecognizable from the source material. Would you believe if I told you that Metro 2033 was actually what Stalker 2 was meant to be, almost 2 decades ago?
Cryptic bullfecal matter aside, picture this. The year is 2003-ish. You are one of the disgruntled employees under some Sergei Grigorovich, a monkey forced to hammer away at a fibrotic slog that is the first Stalker's development cycle.
An expected result from the game engine you work on is called Dreams, and then reality starts knocking.
Exactly. You are Andrei Prokhorov, who is still working on what originally was Oblivion Lost and then became Stalker Oblivion Lost. And as the first game still matures in the collective uterus of GSC Game World, you already developed the base concept for the sequel. A sequel where an apocalyptic event drove people into the subterranean metro, where the surface became an inhospitable world of monsters, anomalies, and other horrors. Sounds familiar? This is neither the Stalker 2 from last year, nor the Stalker 2 that got canned back in 2012. This is the third Stalker 2 that metamorphosed into Metro. This is why the murals in the Black Station are from a Kievian metro and not Moscovian, because the original concept took place in Kiev, a small hurdle that got easily surpassed. Around 2002, a Russian journalist named Dmitry Glukhovsky publishes his little novel online, a short version of his own metro-dwelling adventure, born from the man's childhood visits to the Moscow metro. There, however, the ending was more abrupt and tragic for the hero, unfairly culminating in its middle as a way to baffle the reader. However, it did catch Andrei's eye, and the two individuals spoke. Prokhorov was already planning to quit JSC, later claiming that the writer completed the adventure just for Prokhorov's future project, and then waited like a longing wife for years to turn his brainchild into a game. At around 2005, the key founders of 4A Games split off from GSC, two of which were the creators of the X-Ray engine what Stalker series runs on. A squad later officially joined by Prokhorov. Soon after, Shadow of Chernobyl saw the light of day. In quite a funny twist, almost every worker laid off by JSC following the first Stalker game were whisked up by the fledgling studio, people who already had plans to make their new project. And this is but a surface of the shenanigans, deceptions to capture a publisher, the lawsuits, the discarded builds, the background inner workings that went down with the project. The first demo comes out in 2006, a demo which captivated our child self. It gets noticed by Dean Sharp, a representative of THQ, who happens to be impressed by it, the game found a publisher, and in March 16, 2010, the world got to play this ambitious little project, fueled by dedication and passion for the craft. And this is the year that gave us Red Dead Redemption, Mass Effect 2, the fuel for Markiplier's fame, and your current relationship status, just to name a few. Just rifle through the main releases of 2010, bloody hell they had some bangers. The reviews are favorable, the sales are high, and the sequel is guaranteed. The first thing a new Metro dweller will notice is the atmosphere that bleeds through every crevice, vent, and hermetically sealed door. Death, isolation, decay, with only a few specks of light daring to fight back against the apocalyptic darkness. You witness an entire palette of desolate tunnels, abandoned settlements, the frigid and faceless complexes contrasting with the metro stations, still teeming with life. Against all odds, the remnants of mankind manage to find shelter beneath the soil and lead day-to-day lives in their bleak present. This visual and auditory orchestra breathes a fabricated soul into this 12 or so year old project.
If I were to add a word or two, I find it amazing how a small squad from Eastern Europe that basically ran on passion for their craft alone could bring forth such a vibrant world. The game's radioactive tendrils creep from the shadows, wrapping around your eyes and ears, dragging you into this desperate and desolate world. And as a silent child of Metro that we puppeteer from behind our black mirrors drifts throughout the hostile land, we, the players, take a glance at the dying greatness of a world tragically murdered by the whims of madmen. And dare we say these images hold up amazingly.
The world is absolutely unique with its believable settings, combusting lead dispensers that are a mixture of those dug out from the radioactive ash and snow, and makeshift ones crafted by those skilled and creative in the tunnels. They all sound punchy, and are most quite powerful. The mutated horrors that lurk above and below your feet sound and look absolutely terrifying, and offer a decent range of diversity.
It is still a mystery how only a few generations transformed moles or shrews into these slender, man-sized machines of death, but
as stalkers tend to say, this is the zone, bro. Don't think about it. We can simply substitute the zone for Metro and feel good about ourselves.
Fun fact, the female Nosachi are actually repurposed concept of the bloodsuckers with added wings. Work smart, not hard, I say.
The visuals are to your liking? Perfect. Then how about we season this radioluminous treat with absolutely amazing music? Alexei Milchuk, who previously worked on Stalker, Clear Sky, and Call of Pripyat, and Grigory Beloglazov, created a synergistic mix that goes with the experience just as well as whiskey goes with citrus. The lonely guitar strings, small specks of orchestra nail a railway spike onto the head of the themes of isolation, desperation, rot, and elevating the entire experience.
12 years have passed, yet our heart still shudders at that music.
Indeed. While the lighting and harsh shadows in a beautifully crafted environment are an unsurprising delight. The human models.
And I'll take more than a few of your homo novus with me to hell.
You think you're some old movie cowboy? Have a look, Hunter. 10 soldiers, trained in...
As far as you can, then run for it. The explosion will be massive. As for the crossing, it's already been buried once, but looks like the Nosalises have dug through the cave-in.
Yeah, there's a very good reason why 90% of stalkers wear masks. These creatures look like starved makeup artists who were forced to work days on end to transform runaway mannequins into something as close to human as possible.
I guess this explains why every second mortal looks identical, and identically uncanny. Their 1,000-yard stare permeates your inexistent body. The way their oral orifice is spread apart and closes. Something special. Maybe the mannequin theory holds some truth, as 90% of the characters possess the voice of Jewish-American actor Steve Bloom, or the Jewish veteran, almost a Mossad operator and a former circus clown, Mark Ivanir. And that one guy who voices the stalker Zhorik,
I said come in. Don't stand there.
and who was also in Dying Light.
Well, of course you are. My friend, this is your most lucky day.
What the hell? Who could that be?
There are a few others, but 90% of this game is carried by these three men. Of course, judging a project by its visuals is similar to rating a book by its cover, or a beautiful woman by her looks alone. Sure, the magic lasts for a while, but what truly matters is the juicy meat beneath the surface. So, without further ado, let's move on to the...
Being the studio's maiden title, it is not surprising that some
many.
corners are jagged and rough.
But before we rub our metaphorical groins against these sharp corners, let us enjoy where the gameplay shines. As mentioned previously, the Metro boomsticks are visually interesting and have proper amount of oomph to them, both in the department of sound and damage they dish out. Once again, the original Metro stands apart from its descendants, distinctive in its approaches. On every difficulty setting, the players are given 3 weapon slots, neither Bioshock's expansive palette nor the binary choice of COD. I dare say it's a mongrel of the two. You can freely swap your tools of death with whatever piece happens to be in the clutches of someone's lifeless body, or exchange them with a local trader.
However, the variety of each of the slots can offer are limited. The second slot is reserved for the automatics, the third belongs to the utility, your shotguns, deathly silent pneumatics, and railguns that snap the spine of balance and difficulty. The first slot, though, is allocated to the simultaneously overpowered and underrated hand cannon of the franchise, the revolver. Do your enemies feel lucky? Did you fire 6 shots or only 5? 2 shots at max are enough to down most of whatever dares to look at you in a funny way. This very exemplar is a unique piece in our visual library, since the concept of converting a pistol into a rifle was first witnessed by us here.
Indeed. You can literally find a revolving rifle with a scope for mid-range sniping. Now tell me, how many games allow you to have
Rifle volvers?
Yes, rifle revolvers. The only one we know of is the Nagano Officer Kabi from Hunt Showdown. If you know any other exemplars, do not hesitate to tell us. This concept is absolutely fascinating. These weapons are also held by the occasional AI assistants, which,
In a stark contrast to later installments.
actually deal substantial amount of damage and can effectively take out hostiles. Naturally, there are other means of greatly shortening the lifespan of whatever things your viscera should be in open access. Dynamite and dynamite with nails for life-ending kaboom, and throwing knives for a more subtle approach. And if things get too dire, your trusty knife can chop many a thing into a cutlet. The problems arise when you try to cycle between these and have to individually equip each of the aforementioned four. On an Xbox controller, the game doesn't seem to properly cycle between objects, leaving you with crucial seconds wasted as you try to guesswork your way to the needed slot.
Funny enough, we were originally against the Redux streamlined and, now that I think about it, objectively better approach. As in the latter, there is a small delay between player putting a weapon away and using said grenades or throwing knives. We now stand corrected.
These problems also somewhat feed into the janky and broken stealth.
A fact the devs do not hesitate to mention.
It is the one knows, everybody knows type of deal, which by itself isn't an end-of-the-world scenario per se. You would think this knife, which you spend a lifetime equipping, would be more than enough to take a man out. Silently, that is. Well... Eliminating two nearby hostiles with suppressed guns is another issue.
Down there!
As one needs to have the speed of the Flash, otherwise they risk the survivor mentally transmitting your exact coordinates to every living, breathing being in the area. And higher level difficulties. God forbid you leech their attention just around a checkpoint while your resources are simultaneously in deficit. Then dig your heels in the concrete floor and scrap metal platforms, brother. The war just knocked on your door. They don't magically forget your presence, and absolute deficit of ammunition, if you're playing on range at hardcore difficulty that is, will force you to finger every hole, every crevice and perforated rectum for a single shell or a bullet, which will eventually run out and the cycle commences again. Grenades are almost a must in these areas, but they too are wildcard in the hands of the enemy. On higher difficulty, certain areas where you are technically safe become death traps when you reload. For some fucking reason. Same wall that shielded you thrice will eventually fail. Because of course it does. Health is another curiosity that stands out from other metros. The inventory menu has to fade away before the protagonist injects his veins with a narcotic, and you will most likely be able to brew tea and maybe bake a cake before the process is complete. On higher difficulties, these extra seconds can prove an unaffordable luxury. However, another curiosity crops its head up. Regenerating health. The players do heal their wounds to some degree in other games, but none compared to the original. Make sure to use that privilege well, especially if Uncle Morphine has run off and left Auntie Pain to keep you company.
And speaking about resources that are in deficit, while the first few difficulty settings will listen when you ask them to be gentle, the further ones, like Ranger difficulties, will absolutely not. Although ammunition is not the only thing that nears platinum in terms of rarity and value. You see, the air on the surface is a lethal omen that can choke the light of life out of a person in mere minutes. This brings forth the question, what gear serves as a barrier from certain death? Gas masks and filters. Sustain enough damage and the mask cracks, leaving you alone against the poisoned air. Thankfully, cadavers litter the surface. It is imperative to try and rip a replacement out of their frozen grasp as soon as possible.
Masks are one thing, but escaping the fate similar to a child getting into the free ice cream van lies in filters as well. Ranger hardcore difficulty will make sure that you never have enough of it, which roughly equals your bank of oxygen having barely 30 seconds in reserve. This becomes especially true in the later levels, where you have to dig through every pile like Pablo Escobar's pet opossum, eyes bloodshot from the lack of air, and constant hostile fauna looming over you like the sword of Damocles.
Even Ray Charles could see that this creates a potential soft lock for many a player. Again, the devs have acknowledged this, and have taken care of the issue in the subsequent games.
Speaking of issues taken care of in subsequent games, two things come to mind. While the game mostly functions without hiccups on the modern hardware, it did gift us with a single impossible obstacle in a latter game level. The worst possible place, I'd say. Had to cap the FPS through NVIDIA control panel to progress, but to this game's credit, it was smooth sailing before and just as smooth after this little issue. For those using gamepads without aim assists, we can only share our condolences. You're not alone, as claiming that the aiming is smooth is similar to saying a Labrador Retriever can become a good evolutionary biologist. Having played Risk of Rain with its buttery smooth aiming convinced us that this is the game's fault.
Psst, hey kids, wanna break the game? Introducing Hell Breath, a Metro Gauss gun that
propels your small balls into the cranium of your enemy and simultaneously lobotomizes anything one could call balance. And where do we stumble upon this wonder of engineering? The first human encounter in the first chapters, of course. If you decide to pick up on this game, we wholeheartedly ask you to ignore this overpowered piece of electronics. Naturally, this is 2010s, so an occasional QTE bitch slaps are occasional and occasionally annoying. Mash the prompt button, like upon each press, your account gets $400, and your crush slowly falls in love with you and shortly afterwards get back to the actual game. With all that sourness aside, let's mention one more gameplay feature that many morality-based stories could genuinely benefit from. 99% of the moral choices will not cram option A, B, maybe C into your face's anatomical openings, as they are mostly subtle. But upon meeting its requirements, your screen will flash white for a millisecond to acknowledge your,
Good Samaritanism. Good luck getting a good ending, though.
Many of them will be off the beaten path, which encourages some exploration. Let's just say you really need to go out of your way to get a good ending. That's all we'll say for now. Okay, to sum up everything, the game is good. A bit dated, maybe. The silent protagonist kinda drags the whole experience down in my personal opinion, but there are people who enjoy it, maybe. But hey, at least he does for some reason narrate some of the loading screens. If you can get it, this project is definitely worth your consideration.
But this raises a question. Why play this version? What benefits it has over the successors, especially if you really need to don the hat of Jack Sparrow to just play it?
Good question. Some people praise the original Metro 2033 for being a rough gem in its own distinct way, when compared to its descendants. And we're talking about art style, lighting, and even gameplay. There are also small details that were cut from the Reduxes, and of course, this Metro has one little...
Hey, hello?
As I said, one little trump card. Up its irradiated sleeve, it's the...
Mods, of course! Hey, this busted-ass post-apocalyptic ass radio working? I mean, I know the radiation is a bitch, but at least some things must be heard, right?
Creative boy, why are we incorporating him into our works again?
Oh, you know why.
Because it annoys me.
How astute, my sir.
Let me tell you something. Even the apocalypse can seem like a small breeze when I am cozied up in my beautiful armored dumpster. And even in the heaps of radioactive ash, I am the man to find gems, glistening among the rotten filth and bones. Hell yeah.
And that is the trump card we spoke of. Mods can breathe a new life into every IP.
No. Hold up. This ain't just mods, motherfucker. These are 2 full-on expansions, okay? And the one that is out already is called, you ready for this? The Guide Stories, or some shit.
Pretty sure it's not but the guide's story mistranslated by the authors, but, I mean, the mod's Russian name is literally Metro 2033, The Guide.
It's got an entire hour of new, fully voiced stand-alone story with new NPCs and new boomsticks, motherfucker. Bam! Bam! Okay, new motherfucking guns, man. The God Story was released in 2020 by the Green Games Group. It's a short story about a merchant from Hansa and a stalker from the market, set in spring of 2035. A trader from Hansa asks a stalker from the market to guide him to a certain station. But none of that shit is gonna be easy, motherfucker. They got 3 new maps, new NPC models and weapons, voice dialogue in English and Russian subtitles.
Call us interested in the most saturated of shades. While we do not believe that mods alone justify acquisition of games in 99% cases, Doom, Skyrim, Stalker are but a wee fraction of exceptions due to the sheer library of basically standalone games they possess.
I got something else for you, fruity-ass motherfucker. Now, if you like this little fucking mini expansion, you're gonna like what I have next for you, man. You see, the same motherfuckers that made this are making a much larger sequel. New mechanics, a semi-open world, arguably the best type of open world, you know, side quests, even more content, and they're gonna attempt a real-life recreation of Moscow. Now, you know that old saying, you better visit Russia before Russia visits you? Yeah, I mean, it's definitely true today. It's better to do that in a video game, you know what I'm saying? The story is being kept under wraps, It has a mini open world with buildings you can enter. Okay. Historic buildings. It also includes 3 new metro stations with tunnels and catacombs connecting the whole fucking thing. Lots of side quests, familiar characters from books and games, added and replaced number of weapons in the game, reworked sounds, and changed player parameters. Also, a completely redesigned interface. The release is planned for 2023. This second expansion is definitely gonna leave you locked in a permanent convulsing state of ejaculation.
Oh my god.
Pervert? Oh, I didn't think that the whole ejaculatory convulsion was to be taken literally. Oh.
Now, most likely other mods for this game has been wiped off the surface of the planet. But what remains looks like absolute bangers to me. Nonetheless, one should always be on the lookout for something special in the amazing world of modifications.
Oh! Ooh, that was an experience enough. I guess there's not left but to speak about the story. Greetings, stalkers. It appears you have reached the intermission. We're still experimenting with what type of format of videos we're going to adopt, so we decided to split this analysis review thing in multiple parts, so this is one of them. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, a like, subscribe, maybe a comment of encouragement, a few good words. Definitely not hurt. Thank you again for watching. May these endlessly winding tunnels of Metro lead you towards the few embers of civilization remaining. Oh my, where are my manners? Zygmus, thank you, my friend, as always, for landing me the voice of Marcus from the Armored Dumpster. As always, you are an absolute treat to listen to and a joy to work with. Thank you, my friend. I owe you one again.